Hey, wrestling fans out there, this is referee Vinny Lax. Listen to Stu's Wrestling Podcast, wherever podcasts are found.
You're listening to Stu's Wrestling Podcast. It's time. Your host, Stu Palmer.
This is a huge moment for the show, the Stu's Wrestling Podcast, as I have got one half of Monte and the Pharaoh's Michael Monte on the show today. Monte and the Pharaoh has become one of the most well-known wrestling / variety shows and broadcasts in the world of wrestling and beyond. Mike and the Pharaoh have had so many fantastic guests, ex-WWF, ex-WCW, even guys from the territorial days way back when. So yeah, so much to ask Mike. I look up to Mike, and in terms of broadcasting and what they get to put together every week is fantastic. So, are we ready? I think we are. It's time for Michael Monte, one half of the Monte and the Pharaoh, Long Island's #1 wrestling broadcast. Here we go. My guest today from Long Island in New York, who hosts with the Pharaoh, co-host of the Pharaoh, the host of Monte and the Pharaoh, one of my favorite wrestling programs, interview, shoot shows that there is. It's Mr. Michael Monte from New York in the good old US of A.
Hey, we finally have made it on to Stu's Wrestling Podcast. Letting us have this opportunity to work with you, Stu. I greatly appreciate it. And thank you for that wonderful intro, my friend.
Thank you so much, man. I love the work you do. I love that you get the old guys from the industry on, because I'm more fond of the 80s and the early 90s as well. A lot of people say, well, do you like the Attitude Era? I love the Attitude Era, but I like to harken back to the 80s and 90s. So yeah, the platform you give the guys, because they had great stories, didn't they?
It's funny you say that. We still watch today's wrestling, but as you get older, right, just in anything else in your life, it's not the same. So having the opportunity to actually interview these heroes that you grew up watching, it's kind of a humbling feeling. You know what I'm saying? It's a big deal. So yeah, we love the old school style. We love taking a deep dive into the thoughts of these tenured veterans of pro wrestling, for sure.
I'm going to ask you now, obviously, you guys keep it very, very fresh. And, we hear new stories from yesteryear, especially I'll pull one up, actually, Tony Atlas. Now, we'd obviously seen on Dark Side of the Ring them talking about the murder of Bruiser Brody, horrific to this day. Nobody's been held to account for it over in Puerto Rico. We've heard the stories, haven't we? But I got more out of Tony Atlas when he was on with you guys than I did, on the, internationally known Dark Side of the Ring. So yeah, just speaking to Tony about that, and how did you and the Pharaoh feel when he was opening up about what happened that night?
So that's a really great question, Stu. That's a very interesting story. So Monte the Pharaoh is not based on we don't always want to talk about the same old stuff that everybody speaks about. So we had Tony on a few times before that. I don't know how many times, maybe 2. And Pharaoh kept on saying, when are we going to go into the Brody stuff? And I'm like, dude, like, the Brody stuff has been covered a million times. How many times can we hear the same story? And, to credit of my partner, Jimmy, he always tells me, whether they tell the same story or not, when they're speaking to Monte the Pharaoh, there always seems to be a different twist to it. Maybe it's just the way we present ourselves, and the guys get a lot really comfortable with us. So we asked the question to Tony, and to this day, it's probably one of our most watched videos. So when Tony's telling the story, I'm sitting back and I'm like, wow, this is totally different. I mean, look, the basis of the story doesn't change, but the way he presents it was amazing, and it ended up being an amazing story. And again, like you said, probably one of the more tragic stories in pro wrestling. But as we get to listen to these gentlemen and hear these stories. There's a lot of horrific stories out there. And you and I were speaking yesterday. We were doing some test runs. And the one thing I think we both have in common, we're not into the dirt. Look, if you ask a question, someone tells a story, absolutely. And, you know, the one thing that Jimmy and myself do is we allow people to speak and have their own opinion. Whether we agree with it or not really doesn't matter, right? That's not what we're here for. Do we have debates on a show? Absolutely. That's what the show is based on, right? It's kind of like you being at a pub, having a beer, talking to a wrestler, and just discussing whatever the subject is. Look, we've had guys speak about religion for an hour, politics for an hour, their children or their families for an hour. I think that's what separates ourselves from everybody else. And again, some people really love it. Some people don't love it. But yeah, back to the Tony thing. Still a very shocking story. And still to this day, I'm unsure who really had their hands in this. I have my opinions, but I really don't know.
It's just the fact that his life was cut so short. You know, he was one of the top stars at that time. You know, even further back, and you know, unfortunately for me, I didn't get to see him in a live capacity. You know, he was gone like 2 years after I was born. I think because it was 88, wasn't it? When it occurred. So I was born in 86. But looking back, man, his career and what he was about in Japan. You know, he was beloved, man, but he was scary. A bit like it's the same ilk as Stan Hansen, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we grew up in the Northeast here, so we had very limited touches on Bruiser Brody, right? When we finally got WCCW on cable, you got to see him a little bit, right? But overall, yeah, we also, you know, we're older than you, but we also had our limited views of Bruiser Brody. We always wonder to this day is during the Hulk Hogan era, which is, I think, Pharaoh and myself's favorite. What is it? The golden era, they call it, I guess. If Brody would have come up here, God knows what kind of WrestleMania could have been made out of that situation. So, yeah, that whole event was a shame for all of us, especially as wrestling fans, that we didn't get the opportunity to see Brody in that position.
I've got two gentlemen to ask you about. Now, we've spoken off camera about this. Now, I didn't find out about JJ Maguire's passing. It was a month later, and I messaged you. I couldn't believe it. And I had him on in last year, man. And it caught me off guard. It was late here, and I just couldn't believe he was gone, man. But I know you've had JJ on. He created so much great music with Jimmy Hart, and you know what? Such a lovely, lovely gentleman. We stayed in contact after. He messaged me. What a great guy. And then off the back of him as well, Del Wilkes as well, another man, you know, tragically gone at 59 years of age. I had Del on, another guy who kept in touch, man. Just great guys that you've had in studio with you.
So JJ ended up being a very close personal friend. We spoke quite often. Just like in real life, right? Things get in the way. So you get busy at work, you get busy with your family. We've obviously got the show. So right before JJ's passing, unfortunately, he was reaching out to me quite often because we were planning on bringing him back to New York. And, you know, I just couldn't take his call. But I did speak to him about, I guess, right when Cody Rhodes was being rumored to coming back to the WWE, and he had spoken to me, and we had discussed him coming back up. The one thing I'll say about JJ Maguire is the guy had a heart of gold. It's look, the guy had a great career. He, like you said, he made great music. He was a huge influence in the sport of wrestling, also in the world of rock and roll. Right, we can't forget that either. And it's unfortunate that enough people don't know about JJ Maguire. Hopefully people do their homework in the future. But his passing was a shock to me. And when you wrote me, it was just very shocking. But still, on a positive note, the one thing I think I could speak for the Pharaoh on this too, the one advantage that we've gotten from having the show is getting the opportunity to make and build relationships with people like JJ Maguire and yourself. I mean, the list is long, and you make these friends, and you're better for it as a human being, and you're better for it. It's just something special for your life, Stu. So, it was sad, but JJ left his mark, and what a wonderful human being.
Unreal. What was your favorite song penned by him and Jimmy? If you can look back in the annals of time, obviously the WWF theme songs. I mean, there's over 100 songs, and the WCW ones when they went over. But yeah, which song sticks out for you that they produced together?
I would think "Sexy Boy" would probably be the best song, right? I mean, who doesn't know that song? I mean, think about that. You made a song that every wrestling fan loved, and obviously Demolition too. Yeah, I would go with "Sexy Boy." In fact, one of my favorite moments is when Wisteria Hall, Jimmy's band, played with JJ in studio, and it was, again, it's. Look, think about what you're doing right now, Stu. You're recording history, right? When you're gone and I'm gone, you're forever going to be seen in some sort of fashion. And maybe, you talked about you were born and Bruiser Brody was gone fairly quickly, but you still get to respect and love the man by watching videos, right? You're creating that right there. So again, JJ may be gone physically, but in people's souls, he's still with us. Demolition's
my favorite. I told him that when we did the interview. It's just amazing. That I just can't get over the fact just how many songs they penned, and just incredible. And also, just to go off that a little bit, his book, My Life in Heaventown. I'm going to purchase it when I get a second to sit down. I'm going to purchase the book. I did promise him that when we were on camera. So yeah, just to get some more information on him and his wonderful life and career.
Well, you won't be disappointed. It's a very good read. I read it when I first had met him. We had sent it, get it ready for the show. But yeah, it's a really, really good read. I got to tell you, there's a lot of real wonderful wrestling books out there that even if you're not a wrestling fan, they're very intriguing, and the stories that they tell are pretty wonderful. So yeah, I would recommend it.
Absolutely. Now on to Del Wilkes, another guest I had on in 2020. Another guy kept in contact after, and again, terrible news that was when we had that last year as well. But another man, heart on his sleeve. And I think again, he had a wonderful career as well within wrestling, and you had him in studio as well.
Del, so when Del was in, he was in with Buff Bagwell, and we pretty much spoke about politics and the state of the country. I think that's where Del that's where his heart was at least at this time of his life. He was a really, really another very special human being. We spoke quite a few times, and another sad passing. But look, I smile when you bring these names up because I think about the good moments, right? I don't. Of course I was sad, but, in the end, Del left his mark. And look, it's also, Del said it, right? He had a lot of substance abuse problems, and, between, the usage of steroids and what other kind of pills he was taking or whatever else, and maybe the addiction to alcohol, what it turns out to be, eventually it affects the body. And unfortunately, for a lot of us, it ends up being a very short time on this planet.
Just so sad, man. I tell you, I spoke to him about it. I said his time in WWF was relatively short. He was going when he was with Bret, and they were doing that program. Like I said, there was still more legs in that because Bret was my favorite, but I was I was conflicted because I like the Patriot, obviously Stars and Stripes in WCW. So I told him, I said, as much as Bret was my favorite, still my favorite of all time. I said, you had me conflicted because I loved him, coming out in his mask and his American regalia, obviously. Just that feud could have gone longer, had issues not have come into play.
You know, it's funny you bring that up because I always think about Bret Hart, the whole Canada gimmick. Mm-hmm. That you're right. That had legs beyond where they went with it. And you know, I ask you, why were you such a great Bret Hart fan? Like, what makes Bret your favorite of all time?
Technically, what he could do in there. I think it even went down to what he was wearing as a kid. Your subconscious isn't really there, is it? I think it was the pink and black when I was a lot younger. And I could just tell, as much as, you know, when you're younger, you're not much in the loop with it, and your respect levels grow as you get older for what they did. But yeah, he was just my hero, man. And then that SummerSlam 92, I've said about this many, many times. I was in attendance with my dad. And, you know, I wish I'd been a little bit older, Mike, being at that show, because I was only 6 years old. But bulldogging him, Lennox Lewis coming out with the Union Jack. I can remember all the fireworks going off. But yeah, back to Bret, it was a clinic every time, and the feud were perfect. And then, you know, 2 years later at King of the Ring, where they were in the match together, you know, Mr. Perfect, his back was shot, but you wouldn't have known, would you? That was testament to Kurt Hennig. But yeah, just Bret in general, man. I just gravitated to him. Not the best on the stick, but going back to the Canada bit, that's where he found himself. And had WCW not come in for him and all the issues, I think, like you say, we could have seen a lot more. But I think with Del Wilkes, it was a timing thing, wasn't it? Because obviously they were getting Bret ready for Shawn, weren't they? You know, a couple of months after that.
Yeah, it's funny, right? I guess, you know, you always hear the stories. Again, I'm not any inside, but you always hear the story that they're writing these scripts well in advance, right? 6 months in advance, 7 months in advance. So they stay the course. But it is funny. I agree with you. They could have went a lot longer with that Patriot Bret Hart thing. That thing did have legs. But, you know, again, I enjoyed the Patriots stay up here. I also enjoyed him in WCW when he was with Buff Bagwell, right? Stars and Stripes. So, you know, again, I was always a Patriot guy for some reason. So the one thing I did miss is I wanted Del to wear the mask in studio. And you know, one of our big jokes is we love when masked wrestlers are around because we want to see them like eat and drink with their mask on, because it's like, you know, I think if we were wrestlers, I'd wear a mask. You know what I mean? It seems kind of fun, right? So
it's amazing. Now, you've had countless guests on the show. And it's, again, I use this terminology. I'm not saying you're playing favorites, but some moments that stick in your mind that have been on the show. Maybe some like funny moments that you can, you know, from memory, doing the show, man. And
there's so many, man. I mean, I don't know. My favorite. So again, we don't really mark out, right? It's like we're at a point now in our lives, right? You're a human being. I'm a human being. Obviously, we respect what everybody's done for the industry. And, but I will tell you, I would say our favorite moment was when Bob Backlund was in studio. You know, we grew up on Backlund, right? Hating Backlund, hating every second that he was champion. And then as you get older, you realize what this guy meant to you growing. I mean, you know, geez, we had 4 years as him as champion, watching him knock off the best of the best. And, you know, you're rooting for every bad guy around. And here he is in studio. And just the respect that you have for him, I would say that was probably our favorite moment. And we had, you know, look, we have a lot of laughs with all our guests, right? We just, you know, we have a good time. So I would say I like the emotional side of when the guests are in there, where they get emotional, speaking about either their fallen brothers or their families. I like the inside deep dive of what's going on in their mind. You know, it's funny. Recently, I think CM Punk came out with a anti-abortion T-shirt during a wrestling show, and I didn't know where I stood on that. I didn't agree with it at the time, and then I started to evaluate. You know, anybody who watches the show understands I am not a CM Punk guy. I don't like CM Punk. I don't like his agenda. I don't like people with agendas. Right? It's like you got to take care of yourself. and stay away from agendas. But anyway, I digress. I was thinking about how out of line I thought maybe it was for a wrestling show. But then I said, you know what? This is kind of what Pharaoh and I do, right? We interview people and we ask them their political thoughts. We ask them their religious thoughts. So really, was CM Punk off by doing that? So, you know, in my mind, I have to take a retraction and go, you know what? I guess it's okay he was wearing that T-shirt. But as far as the show goes, I enjoy hearing what the wrestlers think, what their thought process are. You know, anti-Trump, pro-Trump, pro-Biden, anti-Biden, anything they speak about. One of the funniest moments, though, I would say, is Missy Hyatt. I never thought I would meet someone that was such an open book. She just. And she, you know, again, you don't know if you're being gimmicked here, Stu, right? So when you're having this conversation, you're like, all right, are they, you know, they could be working. You have no clue. But this lady she had no filter, man. It was just all out saying how she felt. She actually got us suspended for 2 weeks with her comments. So there you go.
Oh, no. Oh, no. Again, you know, I think the amount of things you see and read about her, and you know, there's stuff that's been traipsed up about her, but for her to be an open book, man, you know, it's incredible. It's incredible.
And I like the fact that people aren't ashamed who they are, right?
Yeah.
You know, we all make mistakes. We're all human beings, and they're not ashamed on with anything that happened. And I like that. I don't like when people are so guarded, right? It's like, if you're going to do an interview, let's not be so guarded. Speak your thoughts and let the people hear what you have to say, no matter what the repercussions are, right? And really, what kind of repercussions are there, right? So,
you live within the New York State area. I've got to ask you now. When you were watching it many years ago, some matches. I'm assuming you went to MSG a lot. You know. So, yeah, just matches, man, that you've got to see over the years that stand out.
So I was a frequent visitor to MSG. So my favorite match of all time, was the war to settle the score. Hulk Hogan against Roddy Piper. That's the start of rock and wrestling. We took the train. We were at the top of the Garden, like the last seat. There's no seats to be held. I think we bought it from a scalper. Me and my friends, and Stu, when I think about that match to this day, I still get chills. That place was unglued for 30 minutes. And, you know, it's funny. Hulk Hogan, for, you know, again, today's wrestling fan, they're always looking for the great wrestling match. To me, wrestling's not about that. Wrestling is about how they can drag you in, make you invested. If you're not invested, look, dude, we're older, right? So when we're kids, it's much easier to get invested. These are your superheroes. Of course, you're going to care. That's almost nature. But as you get older, things change, right? You know, God, if we were interviewing someone at 10 years old and you know, you were interviewing Del Wilkes at 10 years old, I bet you the interview that Stu did at 10 would be completely different than the interview you're doing now, right? So my point is to me, Hulk Hogan is the GOAT, right? That guy changed wrestling forever. Some of the greatest, in my opinion, wrestling matches. And when I say wrestling matches, I mean what they meant to the people and the industry. You know, I hear a lot of, you know, I make fun of a lot of people. I'm going to use the quotes here, the pro wrestling experts, right? That always want to talk about these high level matches, or like the Ricky Steamboat's Ric Flair match, for example. To me, it was a good match. I watched it. Okay. I watched it live numerous times. It was a great match, but it was nowhere in comparison to the stuff that we saw in the 80s with Hulk Hogan, from Hogan Andre, which I still consider the greatest match of all time. Those guys didn't have to do a single thing, and 90,000, you know, 1 billion people were crazy over it. Let's not forget about the main event on Friday with Hogan, on a Friday night with Hogan and Andre, when Andre wins the belt. Macho Man Savage, WrestleMania 5 against Hogan. Ultimate Warrior against Hogan. And then even in later years, The Rock against Hogan. But going back, to me personally, the war to settle the score, the buildup between Piper and Hogan, where now you got to think about this still. Piper probably was 6 foot at best. He probably was taking some of the gas at the point. So let's just put him at 220, all right, at best. Going against a 280 pound, 6'7" dude who's larger than life. And you're like, this guy's going to beat Hulk Hogan and take that title away. And there was no question that this could definitely happen. And by the time this whole story had built up, Stu, if I could bring you in that arena, Madison Square Garden on that day, there would be no doubt in my mind. I know you said you were there. You said you were there for the British Bulldog and Bret Hart, right? You might say that was the greatest match you've ever saw in your life. And the way they go at it, punching it, well, anyway, I don't have to. If you want to watch it, just go watch it on YouTube or go watch the War to Settle the Score, the whole MTV thing. But to me, that probably was the greatest. And I've seen them all, man. I was there for snooker.
Oh my days!
And Morocco, I was there.
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. Mick Foley, when he said over the years on documentaries, he was there. Just, man, incredible. I got to MSG in 2013 for the Hall of Fame. But we were staying in New Jersey because obviously the big show was at MetLife. So we were in and out of New York for the week. So I got to see Bruno, go in, which is incredible. But yeah, man, I've got to get to Madison Square Garden. So just, the Mecca. It is the Mecca.
Well, you mentioned Bruno. So when I first started watching wrestling, again, I credit Pharaoh for that, right? Because, when we met each other in junior high, it's funny, we met each other in junior high and he was a wrestling fan and I kind of scoffed at it, right? I was like, I don't watch that stuff, right? Whatever. And then I kind of got into it. So I caught Bruno at the further part of his career, but I also caught him at a younger age because we had something called the Comac Arena. And the Comac Arena was like a side arena. I think it might have held like 5,000 people, if that, right? Don't hold me to that number. All the wrestling pro experts out there, you got the number wrong, Monte. I get my numbers wrong all the time, so don't hold me to it. But anyway, I saw San Martino there, and let's not forget what the guys before Hogan did that led to that, or the guys that led to what wrestling is today. So absolutely, again, people, I guess, whoever watched San Martino back in the heyday at the Garden would probably disagree with my Hogan statements, right? They probably were like, I was there for Bruno and it was different. We always got to remember something, though, that, look, we all understand that cable television changed the game. But, as great as Bruno was, Bruno would never have been the guy to bring an organization like the WWE to the heights that they rose to. You needed a larger than life character. And Bruno was a larger than life character to the Italians in New York, which I am, right? As Morales was to the Spanish and, yada, yada, yada. So Bruno would not have been the guy. And I will argue that to the cows go home. Hogan was the right guy at the right moment. So
just amazing. Do you know what? I was gutted he wasn't at SummerSlam 92, looking back. But obviously they put Flair involved with Warrior and Savage that night, didn't they? It still drew off the basis that we had Bulldog there. But yeah, man, Hogan just, and then more latterly, even at WrestleMania 30, when they had the three of them come out at the start, I was in attendance at the Superdome, and Austin coming out, The Rock, they weren't even wrestling; they were just talking. And the place just came unglued, man. You can't. It's hard to explain to people who've watched it on telly. And then people that have been in attendance, like you have, for so many great matches over the years.
Do you still go to live matches?
I haven't been to. I went to Dallas in 2016. That was the last WrestleMania I did. But people are asking why you're not going to Cardiff for Clash at the Castle, because it's in South Wales. I'm in North Wales. Mike, I'm not being, what's the word? I'm not being boastful, but I've seen some huge moments in the States at WrestleMania. I've told people this because they were adamant. They were like, "You're going to go to that show," but the prices are inflated, Mike. The ticket prices are ridiculous, but people will pay it because it's the first stadium show we've had in 30 years.
Right.
It's inflated. It's ridiculous, but that's the state of play with WWE now, isn't it?
Well, I'm speaking like an old man now. So I went, what was it? Evolution, right? The first women's pay-per-view. I think that might've been the last live, right? I wanted to be part of that. So I was sitting on the floor, and I got to tell you, it was maybe the worst experience of my life at any sporting event I went to. So it's funny, like I told you about War to Settle the Score being this great event. And I'm a baseball fan, football fan, right? But I got to tell you, it was just a really bad time because it's just a different audience now. Just the whole interaction, and again, maybe it's my age or whatever else, but I'm kind of with you. I told Pharaoh, I don't think I will ever, unless I go as press, will never go to another live wrestling match again. It just, to me, it wasn't enjoyable. It just didn't have the same feel. And again, it just, again, it could be my age. Who knows? You know what I mean? But, again, that's the problem that's happening right now with the whole AEW, WWE thing, right? People don't get the WWE is not catering to Mike Monte or Stu, right? We're not in their core audience anymore. It's moved on. And back in the 80s, they were playing to us because we were the future wrestling fans. We are no longer the future wrestling fans. People have to understand that. So when people are like, I want this hardcore real wrestling, I don't want this child thing and everything else. Bret Hart, you mentioned it before, growing up, the colors, just Bret Hart, the Ultimate Warrior, right? There's this guy, long hair, speaks like a crazy man. Kids love this guy, right? This is what it's about. It's not for us anymore. So, and I'm kind of okay with that, right? Because again, look, I have no problem interviewing guys that are wrestling now. I get offers all the time to bring them in. But it's probably not the core value of the Monte and the Pharaoh show. We're kind of into let's talk to the older guys and give them their time, right? So
I do watch AEW just to scoot over to AEW. I do enjoy it. I've got to be honest. I really, really, really enjoy it. What are your thoughts with how they've gone about it? Obviously, we know Tony Khan's dad is worth 4 times as much personal wealth as Vince. I know it's about sponsorship TV. I know they won't want to use their personal wealth, but at the end of the day, how do you feel that they've got on? We've reached 3 years. What are your thoughts with how that's been going?
The alternative for the other side of wrestling, it's a good idea, but it will never reach. Look, wrestling isn't the same anymore, and it kind of works in trends anyway. You were part of the early 90s, right? Wrestling was not strong back there. I remember going to the Garden where I think I could count the amount of people that were there. Like, you look around, it wasn't the same. So I think a lot of people will say wrestling's never been better. I will disagree. I think wrestling's got its core audience. And what's happening now is that there's the wrestling fan that really doesn't want to enjoy both products, right? They want to pick sides. But again, that's how we've been built, right? We've been built to choose. Look, you're wearing a soccer jersey, right? So you're picking your team. Everybody picks their team now. This is what we do. So it's Team WWE, Team AEW. So are they doing a good job? I guess they're doing a good job. Am I a fan of the product? Sometimes, I guess, is the answer. Right now, I enjoy women's wrestling the most. I think they give me that old school feel more than the men do. But overall, if I would say that there's only one real true superstar in wrestling, to the level of, we'll call it a little outside John Cena, who, again, I've reiterated, I don't know if you agree with this, but John Cena was the last great pro wrestler ever.
I love John, mate. I love John. We were two of the guys at WrestleMania over the years. I've jumped in a little bit here. They had the headband on and the obviously wristbands. Honestly, there's a photo. And like close friend of mine now, we met in America and we all live over here and, you know, become good friends. They were all emblazoned in Cena stuff, man. I've always respected him, Mike. Sorry, I jumped in there.
No, it's fine.
I love the man. I love the man because at the end of the day, when someone like Ric Flair's saying what he's done for the business, a man that's standing a Ric Flair, you only have to listen to what he's said about Cena over the years. He's had a lot of shit, unnecessary shit, I feel, but you know, it's subjective. You're allowed your opinion, you know.
Absolutely. But again, like if I was to ask you, you're this great wrestling fan, you know, who, in your opinion, are the five, let's just call five greatest pro wrestlers of all time? And forget about just wrestling. Just when I say wrestle, I'm talking about mic skills, influence on the industry, you know, back of the baseball card, you know, mic skills, anything. Who are the top five?
Obviously, it's going to be Bret. Bret is absolutely 100%. Hogan, I've got to put Hogan in there. I was more Ultimate Warrior, but if we're saying like, you know, I love Warrior. I love Warrior. But, you know, I didn't really understand it that he was limited because, as you said, he had all the regalia on. And, you know, the way they did it, it was amazing. But then again, you know, he had two great matches with Savage. You know, to be fair, I know that was the caliber of Savage. So, yeah, him as well. Savage, I appreciated Savage more as I got older. I hated him when he was heel. That's what they wanted. That's what they wanted. That's what the machine wanted those youngsters to feel. But when I look back at like King Macho Man and all that, it was amazing. I think I got one more left here.
No, I got two, I think, right? You got
Kurt Hennig. Kurt Hennig's in there, and I'm gonna pick a big man. I've got to say Undertaker, just for the longevity and you know, Vince McMahon and obviously the machine cultivating that character, but he had to go out there and do it, and you know, beating Hogan at Survivor Series, man. You know. I've got to put Taker in there as well, man. I have to because of the time he was doing it, the length of time.
So I'm listening to your list, and who could disagree with that list, right? Now, people can't disagree with it, but in the reality, though, when you look at it, it's hard to argue. You name some of the greatest stars of all time. But my point is here, you brought up Ric Flair. You notice Ric Flair is not on your list.
Because I could extend. I said this to TJ Wilson, to Tyson Kidd when I had him on a couple of years ago, and we both agreed I could have a top 25, and that's not that's just individuals. You know, I could throw 25 with tag teams. I could eat it easily. I could extend off 5. Flair's in there.
Okay, so Flair would be in your top 25. You think he'd be in your top 10?
Yeah. How do you feel about Flair? I've got to ask you.
I thought Flair is one of the greatest of all time. I thought he was a huge influence on the industry. But when I think of the greatest of all time, Ric Flair's not on the list. You know, again, I can't argue with your list at all, but I could tell you what, I could definitely put probably 10 wrestlers before Ric Flair's name even comes up in my mind. Because let's be honest, Ric Flair was huge for the industry, but he was at a time where he was in an organization that was limited. It was a limited organization. And when he came up here, he did nominal damage. I will tell you that I went to the first Madison Square Garden Ric Flair Hulk Hogan match. I've told this story. The place was empty. Empty.
It's mad, isn't it? It's mad to think that, but then he was NWA, wasn't he, through and through? Mm-hmm. It was a different type of audience. That's crazy. And then, you know, we didn't get the match at WrestleMania 8, but I know they did the house show circuit all them times. It's crazy that we didn't get it. But obviously, were they doing it on the basis of what you're saying, that it didn't draw?
Well, it's smart business, right? They did the test market and it wasn't doing well. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, you're hitting it right on the head, Stu. So, you know, probably the best decision not to have that match. Maybe if you look back in the annals of time and you go, man, imagine if they had that match, what it could have been. It was what it was. I think as far as I remember, and I'll even go to WCW stuff, I don't think the chemistry between Hogan and Flair was very good. I don't think their styles matched up. And again, Ric Flair is not in my top 10 greatest wrestlers. And here's another guy you didn't mention, and I'm making a point here. Ricky the Dragon Steamboat.
Yeah.
He's not in your top 10.
I respect the man. I respect the man, and you look at even in the NWA with Flair, those matches, Chi-Town Rumble and all. Again, I can make a case for him. And we haven't even touched upon tag teams. Some of your favorite tag teams, man, just through the 80s and stuff.
All right, don't kill me for this. All right, you won't kill me. You won't kill me on the first one. My favorite tag team of all time is East West Connection, Adrian Adonis and Jesse Ventura. I wasn't an AWA guy, but I did watch them. And then when they came to the WWE, unfortunately, they didn't have a run together really, but they were incredible. And then the Mega Powers. I argue with Pharaoh all the time about that. I felt that the Mega Power was one of the greatest tag teams of all time. Whether they, again, I know they were put together for a reason. Yeah. But I love the Mega Powers. And if you want to just talk about pure tag teams, look, you got the Midnight Express, you got all that. But again, WWE guy, man. When the Road Warriors and Demolition, I was a Demolition guy, man. It was picking sides. Demolition. I hated the Road Warriors, right?
Demolition again. It's all the parallels, isn't it? And then they say, oh, it was just like a knockoff, bullshit to me, man. Because I loved, and I got to meet him as well at WrestleCon years later. Billy Eady, man, unbelievable, such a gentleman, such an absolute gentleman. Barry was relatively quiet. I don't know whether it was because I was excitable, but Bill, I spoke to Bill. After we'd had the photo and stuff, and mad respect for him, and him as a singles guy as well, but just man.
I'm glad you brought that up. The Masked Superstar does not get enough credit. Loved him in Georgia Championship Wrestling, and he came up here. I was totally marking out. Boy, did I want him to beat Backlund, man. Boy, did I want him to beat Backlund. But, we had them in studio, another pair of really good guys, great conversationalists. Again, here is Demolition, one of your favorite tag teams of all time, and they're sitting across the couch, and you're just having a casual conversation. You're like, you know what? Life isn't so bad, right? And so it kind of like ties that childhood dream and just ties it all together, a nice little bow, and you tie it up. But again, there might be people on here watching, oh man, look at these guys, they're marks, you know what I mean? And it's like, I don't even get that term. Like, what is a mark? Why? Because you enjoy something, because you respect someone for what they do, and you want to give them their flowers while they're alive and say, hey, thank you for making a difference in my life. I mean, look, man, wrestling, I sold the story first when I met Pharaoh, and he was a wrestling fan, and he kind of turned me on to it. And watching these guys and being on the microphone, and they're big, right? They're monsters. And this goes back to our AEW conversation. Today's wrestler looks like you or me, you know what I mean? And, not knocking you or me, but there was something special about watching a guy who looked like a superhero and spoke like a superhero. And he was going to do this and he was going to do that. And it kind of makes you, as a kid, maybe come out of your shell a little bit, be more comfortable speaking to people and the public because you feel confident. Or maybe it has you hit the weights and start taking care of yourself. Whatever it's done for you, like you said about Bret, what he's done for you, right? So the terminology mark, fanboy, I've yet to get that, right? And I yet to get it even more, Stu, like for someone who's doing what you're doing, and to use that kind of terminology, because I will tell you that's a hard, strong rule with Pharaoh or myself, is that a fan is a fan, right? These are the people who are showing you the respect to watch your programming, right? Ask you questions, and then you're going to degrade them by calling them a mark or a fanboy. I don't get it. So back to the original question is that's wrestling changes for a lot of people, change their life like baseball, football, whatever. But wrestling on a different level, right? Because it's almost like, other sports, for some reason, when a wrestler is on a microphone, and especially when we grew up, when it was more of an old style with them sitting there with one-on-one with the announcer, you felt like they were talking to you, right? And that, to me, is the difference.
Absolutely. It's just, you can't be. People try and bait me. People try and bait me with that. The marks. So I'm not. Yeah, all right, then. That's what you think. That's what you think of me. That's fine, Mike. Now you've had countless interviews. We're into the hundreds of guests that you've had, yourself and Pharaoh, on the show. But who would you like to interview that you haven't had on? Who would you like to come into studio? I'd love to ask you that. I'm sure there's many. I know you've had a plethora of people. It's amazing. But yeah, who's on there that you haven't had?
So we were going to have Jesse Ventura on. We had some logistical problems at the last minute. That was a killer. That, to me, was going to be the ultimate interview for me, because Jesse was, when you talk about Jesse Ventura, forget about just the wrestling aspects of it. This guy was a Navy SEAL, right? Yeah, he defended this country. He was the governor of Minnesota. He was an actor in movies that we loved, right? And then just add the wrestling onto it. That was going to be maybe one of the hugest moments. I got to tell you, Stu, with the exception of Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, and Hulk Hogan, we've pretty much run the gamut here. I said to Pharaoh, I'm like, there's not, again, and we love having return guests too, because we've become friends with these guys, right? Absolutely. We sit there, we bullshit with them, but yeah, Jesse Ventura would have been the ultimate interview. I was very, very excited for that. So that was a major disappointment. And again, maybe it's for the best, because I think maybe I probably wouldn't have been able to speak for the first 20 minutes of the interview. But now, you know what, man, they're all, it's funny, Stu, sometimes you think a guy is coming on and you don't know what you're going to get. I know, use Tonga Kid, for example. I'm like, look, Tonga Kid to me was special, right? Because growing up, he's the guy that replaced Snuka for a little bit when Snuka was hurt after the whole Piper angle. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, the guy's had a decent career, but where are we going with this? And they just surprise you. And also you're like, wow, this is just incredible. I mean, we don't really do a lot of independent wrestlers, right? We just had a independent wrestler on recently. This guy killed it, man. I mean, holy cow. I'm thinking to myself, like, if this guy does an interview like this, who knows what he could have done, and if he had the opportunity to actually, work for an AEW or a WWE. So there's definitely talent out there. I mean, Stu, I guess if I had to answer the question, would be Hulk Hogan. If we had Hulk Hogan on, then we probably have reached the pinnacle, and we could probably just call it a day.
It's amazing. I know you've had countless people, high-standing people who are, so prevalent, man. So yeah, just to see, that there is a couple still on the bucket list, man. Absolutely. Right, I'm going to get on to Pharaoh now, right? Because a lot of the time he wears a Manchester United top. I'm an Everton fan. We've just stayed up. We nearly got relegated to the league below. Yourself, are you into soccer? Or I know you've spoke about baseball and football. But soccer, do you ever catch any soccer, football, our version?
I actually played soccer on the off season growing up. I was a football player, but I also played on the off season. And then I actually coached for, 14 years of soccer.
Wow.
But if you ask me if I'm a huge fan of it, I am, but more on the women's side, right? I don't know what it is. I really enjoy women's sporting events. I don't know what it is. I just enjoy it more than men's in a lot of cases. Now, again, baseball, like I veer towards men, but on the soccer end and On the wrestling end, it's more towards women. But yeah, do I watch European soccer? No. I know Pharaoh's a big European soccer guy, but Pharaoh is Jimmy. If I could share some points, Jimmy and I were friends very young in age, and then we kind of separated for a very long time, and then we connected, and hence the show started. Jimmy is a really special type of guy, really nice-hearted guy who loves sports and can rival anybody in professional wrestling, meaning his love for professional wrestling is well beyond mine, right? He loves everything about the sport, the ins, the outs. He respects what they have done for him. Because again, we talk about our childhood, what these, if you're spending, you don't have a lot of friends or something like that, but you had Channel 9 here in New York, where that's where they showed the old school WWF stuff. And that's what you had at midnight. I mean, I think that means a lot to your life. So yeah, Jimmy's a special type of guy. I will tell you that this whole thing has changed our outlook on how things are. Because Stu, I don't know who you run into often, but there's one thing about pro wrestling is I've never met, and I'm going to say this kindly, so many fake people in my life. And I'm not talking about the wrestlers either. The wrestlers are probably the most genuine of them all. It's these guys that call themselves promoters. It's these guys that call themselves book writers, these guys that call themselves producers, they promoters, promoting. Stu, I got to tell you, these guys would sell their mother for a penny. And I deal with them all the time, man. And I see them all the time. And when we first got into this, we were bamboozled by them, right? Because, again, you just think what you see is real when you first get into it. And then as you get to know these people, you go, oh my God, these guys, like I wouldn't talk to them if I ever, whatever. And, but I will tell you, this wrestling thing is really, really scary. It's like, and warning to all new podcasters or broadcasters, be very careful out there who you deal with and the stories they tell you, because I will tell you from personal experience, and you heard it from Mike Monte, these guys are frauds, all of them. They're all full of crap. And I guarantee it, 99% of the people you're going to run into are just liars. And not to keep going on this, Stu, but the reason is, right, we're all in this together and we're all doing our thing. But, look, you're doing this for the love of it, right? But I'm sure at some point, and correct me if I'm wrong, you want to be successful, right? Absolutely. You want to be seen. Absolutely. And maybe, God willing, you could do this as a living, right? And, and so let's not fool ourselves here. Everybody wants their piece of the pie. Mm-hmm. And everybody's going to fight for that piece of the pie. So when you see Monte on Stu's podcast, this doesn't happen often, right? This is respect I have for this man, because I see the way he conducts himself. I see the way he speaks to people, and he's a genuinely nice guy. And how do I know that? We've met just traveling, doing this thing together, and we've text back and forth, and we've hit each other on Facebook, and you can tell genuine people. But you won't see me on a lot of other things, because you know what? I don't trust. Absolutely. And I'll be honest with you, we don't give a lot of rubs of the year. We get asked for a lot of rubs. We don't do it, right? We're in this to win it, right? We're in it to win. We're doing this. We're just not, what we did for fun has turned into a business. So we are in this to win it. But again, if you're an aspiring podcaster or broadcaster, because we don't consider ourselves a podcast, don't trust everybody, because they will trick you and fool you and drive you to the bottom. So I'm off my soapbox, but I had to just say that.
Life lessons, Mike. Life lessons, isn't it? Yeah. I can tell, some things you can take with a pinch of salt, and it comes across. I love doing this just to me for a second. But I know if I was to quit doing it tomorrow, somebody else will come in. I'm under no illusions, you know. And it's great. It's great charting all over the world and stuff like that. It's been amazing. But I know if I was to finish tomorrow, somebody else is going to come in. I know you can attribute that to other stuff. It's just the nature of it, isn't it, Mike?
Yeah, well, but you know what? But just like you just said, you could attribute to other stuff. But guess what? You fight in your real life, right? You fight, and you fight here. You're going to fight for your piece of pie. So again, when you see your podcast charting, right? So listen, Pharaoh will attest to this. I've got analytics and charts all over our office, right? That shows all our sponsors what we're doing. And you can look, and guess what? Your podcast is noted there. I graph you every day along with like 8 or 10 other guys. And you know what? That's what we're doing here, right? And so again, you love it. There's nothing wrong with loving what you do, right?
Yeah.
But let's not be delusional. We're in this to win it, right? So again, you know, just I guess, again, it's a sore subject with me because in the beginning we met some people that really fooled us and we took a little bit of a beating. And then when you realize all these people are just nothing but frauds, you know what I mean? Then, you know, and they know who I'm talking about, by the way. I'm looking directly at them because they know. And usually I would just say their names, you know, but I'm not going to do this on your podcast. But
it's fine.
They know who I'm talking about. So, and you know what? I call them out. I would call them out every day because you know what? There's one thing. I don't believe in dishonesty. So whatever. But, you know, again, we'll stick to the point. But again, I'll reiterate that you are one of the different guys out there.
Thank you.
And there's not many of them. That's for sure.
I respect you and Pharaoh, what you do. You know, I look up to you guys. I do. That's how it is. But no, thank you for the kind words, man. I think it's being believable. You can tell when someone's, there's been countless podcasts, especially through COVID and lockdown, wrestling. It was just like, it was rehashed stuff. Who am I to say that somebody can't do a podcast? But I was watching some of it, Mike, and I'm just like, it's not engaging, man. You know, there'll be some people that don't like the way I do it. And that's fine. That's fine. But it was just rehashed stuff, people reviewing stuff that it's been done time and time again, Mike.
Well, remember what you're doing is different than what other people are doing, right? So, you know, you might have a lot of real popular podcasts out there that get thousands and thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of views, right? And they're doing weekly recaps. But here's the ticker or the warning to this whole thing. When you're doing that, no one's going to go back to find out what happened on Monday Night Raw on March 5th of 2022. At the time, maybe people wanted to know, and you got your quick hit, okay? But the stuff you're doing is stuff that people are going to look back well after you're gone, okay? And it will last the test of time. So your approach is the right approach. And again, to sit there and, again, a lot of stuff isn't engaging. I listen to these guys who claim to be these experts that have been traveling around the world and they've been in the wrestling world for 30-something years. And these guys have the same line every show. It's like, write yourself some new material, please. I mean, look, talking about our show, I think that's what makes our show different. Jimmy and I have been friends for a long time. So this is not like we have a script, right? There is a script, right? There's bullet points that we're going to hit, but our conversations are not scripted. But that comes with two people that are very close friends that don't necessarily agree on 99% of the things that go on in life, much less wrestling. And we have a conversation, and the conversation translates well, in my opinion. That's what differentiates ourselves from each other. And I think when the wrestlers are in there, they realize that too. This is not your regular wrestling show. I don't have to sit there and talk about 1978, what I did. We're just going to talk about whatever hit us this day. It doesn't matter. And that is the beauty of the show. And that's the beauty of your show. And that's the difference maker. So again, you know, these people that are around, they may be getting these hits at this point, but it won't last. It's not sustainable. being sustainable is the secret here. And so again, I think we're on the right pace here.
Absolutely. Well put, Mike. Well put as well. Yeah, that's it. That's it, man. Now, in closing, I'd just like to know what's coming up on Monte and the Pharaoh. What's coming up? Obviously, I know you've got scheduled stuff every week as well. I'm aware of everything that goes on. But yeah, for the viewers and listeners who haven't seen your stuff, just to let them know what's coming up on the schedule, man.
So just for people that may not know us and you're just catching us for the first time, and thank you again, Stu, for having me on. Pharaoh obviously sleeping. That guy, that's all he does is sleep. So he only wakes up for the show. He's like a vampire, right? Thursdays at 9:00, and then he goes back in his coffin until next Thursday. It's Long Island's #1 pro wrestling broadcast. Okay, it's a television show. It's seen about by 100,000 viewers weekly. We're on all social media. The show is two friends that discuss wrestling and also do interviews with legends of the past and possible legends of the future. We've had every superstar you could think of. You can catch us on all social media and see who we've had, catch old interviews. They're very engaging. We've had some actual social media wars with some other podcasts that have translated well. And when I mean translated, they were done in fun with some seriousness. Well, a lot of seriousness. But upcoming guest, we're looking at Greg Valentine in July.
Amazing.
One of the greatest of all time. We were supposed to have Gary Wolf, Vito, Big Vito, and Shane Douglas. Again, Shane's been a regular on the show, but we had some producers. So Vito will be back in studio. And again, my expectations is we'll have Greg Gagne on the show. Listen, if they wrestled, they will be on the show. And, and then we have our regulars. And again, on the channel, we've got also other shows. So even if you're not a wrestling fan, you could go to our YouTube channel, which is just YouTube page or Patreon page. We've got Dave Hebler, who is the bodyguard for Elvis. We've got Macho Man Days, which is the Macho Man impersonator.
I've had much on.
I love that interview with you and him. And by the way, you got a nice little hit on the dirt sheets too, right?
Yes,
so that's pretty good.
Yes, they picked it up. That's always a bonus, Mike. It's always nice to see it in print form.
Tell me how you feel when you see yourself on the dirt sheets.
Fine, because it's all been positive, but maybe there is some negative. I'd love to hear some negative, Mike, and I'd take it on board as well. But that's just it is positive. But I know for a fact people have slated me. I just get when you get an aura. You're saying about trusting people and the level of trust. It's like what's actually being said. It's quite funny to me.
But as you get bigger, it's just going to keep happening.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But you know what? Believe what you do, stick to what you have. And you know what? Look, dude, you can't be everything to everybody. When Pharaoh and me were first doing it, the comments that were said about our show, Pharaoh used to go crazy. Seriously, get these guys off, block them. I'm like, everybody has a right to their opinion, man. And you know what? That's why we do this. You want to put yourself in the public eye. You're going to have to take some feedback. So you can't be everything to everybody. Be true to yourself and be honest. And don't be a pro wrestling expert who lies all the time and just talks a lot of bull crap, right?
I think the fact Bill ran it. Bill's the ultimate for me. Bill up there. Amazing. The fact he ran it and he paraphrased the show, man. And I've been trying to get Bill on for 3 years. We've had back and forth. I love Bill. I love Bill and what he
Bill Apter was one of my favorite interviews. Another legend in this industry. And again, to have him mark your show. See, I'm watching you now, right? We didn't even talk about this.
Of course, we've never discussed this off camera.
No, I know everything that's going on. That's my job, right? I'm the business guy, and I'm the straight man of this whole operation. And I'm watching what everybody's doing, because guess what? You could always learn from someone too, right? You know how you said, like, you watch some of these shows and they're just awful, but guess what? Sometimes there's gold in there. If you listen enough, you could go, kind of like that approach. Could use that, maybe. You know what I'm saying? If you ask Pharaoh will tell you he don't watch anybody. He doesn't care about anybody, but he's full of shit. So my point is, bro, is I just keep plugging along. Again, people got to realize, right? There's charts out there. There's true analytics out there. And Stu, you're a charter. I can name a lot of people that are not charters. So, understand that what you're doing is making a difference.
It's just a bonus, the charting. I going back to that. As long as I'm enjoying it, it's lovely. It's lovely to see Apple and all that and doing so well. But yeah, it's just the day I don't enjoy it is the day I call it a day. But yeah, and there's been a few times since 2019 where I've been close to calling it a day. I'll be honest. But that's my
what made you decide that you wanted to be done?
It was just like personal headspace. I've had stuff go on the years. I've had some mental health stuff. I take medication. But at the end of the day, it's like my version of serotonin. They say go to the gym, go for a run. That's what the podcast is to me. It's my serotonin. It's my good vibes. For you. So that, it's just been amazing, the people we've had on, Mike. Yourself, just the stories, man. I've always been inquisitive. I've always asked questions in life. So that's why, man.
Well, you got to keep going at it, man. And you know what? It's like you always got to get trials and tribulations in life, right? And you just got to work through it. And, again, we've almost called it quits. I mean, me and Pharaoh, we broke up a year in, right? We had a few arguments and then we got past it. And, it's a tough go. And again, look, you're younger than me, but we're late to the game in this whole thing, right? Yes. People have been doing this a very long time. So to achieve what they've achieved, look, there is something called first to market. So if you're first to market, doesn't mean you're better. It just means that you've got the advantage of being first to market. And if you've been around for 4 or 5 years, a 4 or 5 year jump's a big deal. There's guys that have been doing this stuff since 1998, whether they've been doing it on their phones or whatever else they've been doing, right? That's a head start. So they've already built their fan base. So when they're venturing into YouTube and all this other stuff, it's only natural their fans are going to follow them, right? It takes a while to get a following, but the cream will always, like your man Macho Man said, will always rise to the top. And you know what? You're talking to two people, you, Monte the Pharaoh, we're the cream of the crop, and we will take down everybody else in the future. Just a matter of time. They could smell us coming, dude. They could smell us coming. So watch out. Thank
you, man. Thank you. My guest, it is nearly 6:10 on the East Coast America in Long Island. He's an early riser. It is co-host of the fantastic Monte and the Pharaoh. They've got so much great content. You can get him on television in your area. You're across everything, man. All the podcast apps, YouTube. There's clips as well, Mike. Yeah, just thank you so much for the content. And the guys in wrestling, man, that, we're working over 300 days a year to provide, ultimately for the families and their stories. So yeah, just thank you. And I love Monte and the Pharaoh. I'm not just saying that because we're on camera either, how much I respect.
Well, it's okay. It's okay if you did anyway, but I got to say thank you for having an opportunity to spend this hour with you. Thank you for allowing me on Stu's Pro Wrestling Podcast. And, again, much respect, sir. And we will see each other in the future. And God bless.
Thank you. Great insight there from Mike. A huge wrestling fan, and so many matches that he got to see. Iconic matches from Madison Square Garden, as you got to hear. And I look forward to see what is coming in the future with Monte and the Pharaoh. They've got much cast. They've got so many extra shows that they broadcast weekly. It's amazing, to be able to put together all those shows and put them out at a high level, at such a high level, is inspiring to me. A big thank you to Evade Escape. As you've heard in the intro and outro, it is Charade, available on all platforms, music platforms, YouTube, you name it. Please give Evade Escape a follow. As always, a big thank you to Chris Dutton for editing and making us look so slick. A big thank you to the Mad Dog Mike Angus for the show intro there. And we will see you very soon for episode 120.